Don't grow too fast to the point that you don't care enough about your properties.
Today, I'm super excited to be here with Mina. He is the founder and CEO at Xuru Stays, which is a property management company based in Egypt. Mina basically went from working with Airbnb as a market manager to eventually start his own management company. And today, they manage more than 200 properties.
Working for Airbnb was a game changer for me because I could clearly see the market gap. I could clearly see that this kind of service industry is gonna be the dominant one. If not, it would actually take up a lot of market share from hotels.
Going back to your advice, which was don't grow too fast, what have you seen is the right pace at which to grow?
You would have to take your baby steps. Don't go all in because this is something that will definitely ruin your pace. Things change overnight. If you don't have a revenue management tool, you won't actually understand your pacing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality, and where we aim to bring together entrepreneurs, investors, founders, leaders, and operators in the vacation rental and hospitality space so they can tell us about their stories, their lessons that they have learned along the way, and maybe even some of the mistakes that they might have made along the way so we don't have to make those same mistakes ourselves. Today, I'm super excited to be here with Mina. He is the founder and CEO at Xuru Stays, which is a property management company based in Egypt. And it's a very, very interesting story of how Mina basically went from working, with Airbnb as a market manager to eventually, start his own management company. And today, they manage more than 200 properties in the region. They're one of the most established and larger operators in the space. And he's an active industry player in the region, in the Middle East. And so yeah, I'm super excited to be talking today about what it was to work with Airbnb, what were some of the lessons there, the process of starting and scaling a property management company in a market like Egypt. What are some of the challenges that come with it? What can we learn in terms of homeowner acquisition, in terms of branding, in terms of quality control and guest expectations and a guest experience? So yeah, a lot of things that we're going to get into today. Very, very excited. But let me start, Mina, with just what we usually like to start with as a question, which is, if you were to start all over again, it's been almost 7 years now, 6 years and 4 months here that I see, and knowing what you know today, what would you do differently?
Oh, well, first of all, thanks, Seb. I'm really excited to be on the podcast. In this industry, a lot the networking aspect of the industry is so fascinating. Whenever we get in touch with anyone who is in the same industry, the conversation doesn't stop. We keep on, talking about so many things. So answering your question, what would I change? Honestly, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, it's such a blessing to be part of this industry because you think it's that big, but it actually isn't. It's fairly small. Everyone knows everyone. It's such a small round table. Everyone's going through the same pain. Everyone's looking forward to the same solutions. So I wouldn't honestly change anything. I'm really excited for the future for this region, specifically the Middle East and Africa, or to be more specific, the Middle East and North Africa, because parts like South Africa are way more established. But in that region, the Middle East and Africa, it's so um, booming right now. It has a lot of focus on it. So many things are happening in this part of the world. Airbnb wasn't established in the past 6 7 years. Now it's starting to pick up. Governments are starting to put more regulations. People are more interested in visiting these countries. So Yeah, I wouldn't change anything. It's a I'm really grateful to be in that in this time in
Hmm.
this region, to
Hmm.
be honest.
So let me ask the question otherwise then. You wouldn't change anything, and that makes sense because what you did led you to where you are today, right?
Yeah.
Despite the lessons and mistakes. What advice would you give to the Mina 7 years ago that was going to start this company? What would you tell that younger, earlier Mina to keep in mind, be careful with? Hey, this is not as easy as it looks, or maybe hey, this is easier than it looks, or hey, make sure to hire this, make sure to hire that, make sure to set up this, make sure to set up that. Like, a lot now that you didn't know when you first started in this business. So what would be
Obviously,
that
yes.
key piece of advice that you would give yourself when you were starting?
Okay, so when I was starting, I was too focused on the guest experience, the branding, how it looks like. I was pushing everyone on the team too much. Why? Because obviously you don't want any negative reviews. You want to be perfect in being what you are as a property manager. You want the highest yield for your property owners. So I was doing a lot. I wasn't delegating any of the work, which is obviously a transitional, you know, part of being a solo property manager into a more developed, I would say, manager or leader. So this transition, if I would have had advice from a future me, I would probably say delegate more, because this is how you can actually grow. So trusting team players, trusting people on the team was something I was struggling with, to be honest. I'm a very perfectionist guy. I like to have everything just the way I want. I used to be like, back in the past, I was staging every single apartment that we have got on board to make sure that it's actually picture perfect for the guest, which is something that should have been delegated way before that time. I was so involved in interior designs, in furniture designs, in the names of the properties. I was naming the properties myself. So this is a lot of um, manual work that I've once I actually delegated that to other fascinating team members. I was like, okay, I'm not the only clever guy here, you know? You realize some people actually can do your job even better than you. And this is something that I didn't experience. Like, I had no experience in that. So I love now trusting everyone else and leaving myself the last to speak or the last to decide, unless it's something I'm solid on, or something that I really believe in. Then I would make my point. But giving the way to the other team members uh, just makes a lot of difference. Uh, when you have like 5, 10 people talking in a meeting, if you're the leader, they're probably gonna shut up because the boss is saying something, and so we don't need to think, right? But if you have all the 10 encouraged enough to give their ideas about some sort of an issue or something to work on, then you have a, like a room full of ideas that you can pick and choose from. So this is something that I would have wanted to have back in the days. If I would choose any value, this would be my top value.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the process of going through that, because as someone that is perfectionist, as someone that likes things to be done a certain way and well done, and who takes pride on that work, I hear this often, right? That the challenge that comes with letting go of that control and starting to delegate. So for you, you know is there something you would tell yourself when you were starting that would be that would allow you to do this faster? Like, what was it for you basically that allowed you to start trusting? Like, is it just hiring the right people? Is it training them well? I mean, I'm sure it's all of it, but was there something also like internal that had to happen in your head that allowed you to basically say, yep, like, it's time to start growing? Or do you think it should just be like you do it until like it's just a matter of capacity, you just can't take anymore, and only start delegating then? Like, yeah, what would be kind of like the if you were to summarize how you would want your let's say your younger self to do this differently from how you did it? Is it start sooner? Is it just go straight into delegation mode? What would you recommend?
Okay, so when you start this kind of, or any kind of startup, to be honest, you don't have enough uh, financial resources to get the right people on board, right? So
Mhm.
you usually wear all the hats. You're the HR director, you're the technical director, you're the property manager, you're the sometimes you're even the housekeeping, right? You're actually cleaning the department. So when you start, the issue is, there's a very thin line between, okay, I need to get the right people on board who can actually think like me, and at the same time I need to trust them enough with what I've already built. So this is a very, tight rope to walk on, because if you don't trust them enough, then you're doing their job again. And if you do and they're not competent, then you're losing a lot of money. Basically, you're losing a lot of business, so they can bring your business down. So this was the kind of challenge. So um, and this kind of business as well, the property management business, you don't want to grow too fast, because growing too fast is going to ultimately lower your standards in terms of service, in terms of cleaning, in terms of customer service, in terms of pricing, in terms of everything. So you get more diluted because you worry less about the properties that you have. You've got like 300 properties, 50% of them are booked, 50% are not. So what? You're making revenue anyway. But if you are actually measuring this on a property level, you would want all your 300 properties to be optimized in every single way. You would want them to be nicely priced, very competitive on the pricing, very competitive on the interiors, very competitive on the quality of on the cleaning, everything. So my advice would be, don't grow too fast to the point that you don't care enough about your properties. And when you do, if you happen to get like, let's say, a client with 50 properties, for instance, make sure that when you grow too fast and you've got a big team, that you once in a while book your property. You book your property, walk in, see what's the guest experience like, because you'll probably be so amazed about how bad it is or how good it is. So this is something that I recently did, and I was really surprised with the results, because I figured out that we send so many automated messages that doesn't mean anything to the guest nowadays. So you optimize that way. So don't sit in the office and then see what's the guest experience. I would say just do it on the ground. So these are some things that I figured out it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and like you said, on the growth side, it's very interesting, right? Like, not growing too fast. And right now it's you've got hundreds of properties. What's the updated number of properties right now that
We're
you have?
close. We're almost 200 now,
Almost
and we
200.
have like, yeah, 200 properties in Cairo, in many cities in Egypt, basically. So we're across three regions in Egypt. Each of them are something like two of them are like 400 kilometers apart. So coastal and urban, and some are near the pyramids, overseeing the Giza pyramids,
Hmm.
and we're also recently we have launched in Dubai, which is a very competitive landscape, and so we're self-funded. We're not
Hmm.
funded in any way. So it's kind of a family business mindset, which makes it more competitive because there's no one to control the direction of the company. We are making the decisions, and we're trying also to be part of shaping a market like Egypt's market, which
Yeah,
is a
no, and we'll
very
get into the
new
challenges
market.
of Egypt, right, as a market. And I'm curious to know, because on the topic of not growing too fast, um, some people would consider 200 properties to be, a lot of properties, right? It did take, several years, right? It's been, close to 7. So how did you know? And especially again in a market where, like you said, the markets themselves are spread so far away from each other. So like that is a challenge in and of itself, like in terms of operational complexity that many operators in other areas wouldn't even comprehend. So how did you approach the decision of when you could continue hiring? Like, because there's always that challenge of like, you have growth potential and you have growth pipeline, and then you have, your staffing needs and your needs today, right? But
Yeah.
you're always kind of like balancing, do you hire, do you overstaff, in preparation for the future? But then what that might do is that might mean that the current team gets used to, working, in a level of workload that's not really, at their capacity level because they're overstaffed. And how have you balanced that whole like hiring versus growing, in terms of, in the context of what you said earlier, which is that your advice would be, not to grow too fast? Like, were there any stories, any mistakes, any lessons with regards to that you could share?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So when growing, what we adopted, which worked for us, was um, when we enter, say, a market that is 400 kilometers away from where we are. We basically started with one or two properties that were interested, but then once and we would typically hire one, say, supervisor or just a staff member, which obviously is a lot of cost for what you are actually going to make. And this is the kind of investment that you would have to make in terms of growing a sub-market, for instance, which is far away from where you are based. Once you've got your first property, or based on management model, once you get your first property, if you do very well, the word of mouth would really spread, especially if it's a market that is barely touched by any other professional property management company. So like property owners want professional advice. They don't want you to give them the numbers that you and them dream of. They want the actual numbers. So being transparent helped us a lot. We were able to grow a market with over 90 properties just using word of mouth. So one single property owner that is happy will definitely spread the word, and you can actually give. I mean, you can actually consent this property owner in sharing his experience or sharing his ROI with for marketing purposes. And this helps a lot in such a market because everyone's gonna start comparing their numbers with your numbers without even talking to you. And then you see the phone ringing. Okay, take our property. We heard about your business, we heard about your company, and we like it. We see how it looks, and if it's nice on the marketing side, it's not really a hard job to get to acquire, listings. Everyone on the property owner side is looking for a good, well maintained property, and someone that can actually that actually has a lot of experience in terms of revenue management, pricing, staging. This is what a property owner is looking for. So if you do the initial investment of hiring a single person to serve that market, you'll quickly see that now we've gotten like 90 properties in that market, and we've got almost 20 employees serving that submarket in Egypt. Just
Mhm.
it's an ecosystem that you build with one person and with one property. You can easily scale that with a word of mouth, not even with a single, penny that you would have to
Mhm. Mhm.
spend money on. This is one way. The other way is a typical way, which is, uh, marketing, spending on social media, spending on Google Ads, understanding the other competitors in the market. The other, I wouldn't call them competitors, to be honest, because everyone has his kind of flavor. Everyone runs
Yeah.
the business in a different way, with a different tech stack, with a different mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And that's in terms of adding owners, right? You're saying, you
yeah,
just go in terms of word of mouth, because you basically, what you said is start small in a new market. Make sure you start with a few properties, make sure you have someone dedicated for the oversight of those few properties, and then the word of mouth will take care of itself if you did it right from the get go with the first few properties. That makes sense. Now, let's say you did such a great job that you're having all these calls, all this word of mouth, all this demand from owners. Again, going
mhm.
back to your advice, which was don't grow too fast. um, what have you seen is the right pace at which to grow? Like, let's take for example, you're opening a new market right now as we speak, right? You're opening Dubai, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to be growing Dubai, you know differently from how you grew, your other markets that you've opened in the past? What are you going in and doing differently this time, in terms of speed of growth, in terms of you know who you take on? Because again, we're clear that if you do things right, and you do a little bit of marketing, you will be getting owners, right? It
Yeah.
becomes now a matter of how many owners do you have the capacity to actually handle, and which owners do you actually want to work with. So what can you tell us about that?
Okay, so it depends on the market. Obviously, if you're entering a market that has like two players and you're one of them, it becomes different. You've got to put a different mindset on this. You're only competing with another property manager. For instance, you're competing on, let's say, interior design. You're competing on commission. You're competing on likability of the property or the reviews, or you find your edge. You promote yourself in a way that you understand this business, you understand what actually matters for a property owner, and the moment they see that, they will trust you with their property, right? But if you're entering a market like Dubai, where there are 1,700 property managers or property management companies, and huge ones, you would have to put on a different suit. You would have to take your baby steps, right? Don't go um, all in, because this is something that would definitely ruin your pace. You would have to enter that market from a different perspective. Like, say, you are a property manager, you would probably in a market like Dubai, you would go for, say, subleasing. You would work on yourself for the first year. You would actually test your ability, test your muscles at achieving good yield. And then once you actually do, and you're confident enough with your operations, with your pricing, with your strategies, then only you would enter the field, right? Then only you can actually market for yourself amongst all these huge operators. Because at the end of the day, in a market like Dubai, there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of choices for a property owner. There's a lot of volatility as well. So a property owner would say, I'm not happy this month, I'm just going to sign up with another company. I'm not happy the next month, I'm signing up another property manager, and then goes on. So there's a lot of volatility. You want to build a brand, and you want to build a reputation, and you want to build confidence in your supply. So you can't just start big in a market like Dubai unless you're actually funded. Then you would acquire a lot of listings. But in a place like Guna, for instance, which is a sub market in Egypt, you've got two players. You're one of them, say. So, and you've got like hundreds of supply. What would you do if you actually succeed in one or two? Then you have to campaign, and then you have to spread the word of mouth, which and tell your property owners, can you actually recommend me to your neighbors, who are obviously other investors, or other, property owners. He would gladly do. I mean, shoot a podcast with a property owner. Make him do a small 20-30 second campaign. If he's over the moon with you, take advantage of that.
Yeah,
Because
for
this
sure.
is this is the most this is the most, I would say, solid way of spreading your brand.
100%. 100%. Yeah, no, couldn't agree more with that, and the reputational aspect of it, and the social proof that comes with having a testimonial from an owner. I think that's worth a lot. Um, Now let's talk about your experience working with Airbnb. So you had to go through like several rounds of interviews first of all to end up getting there. You talked about the story of how you kind of applied for the fun of it, weren't too sure where that was going to go, and next thing you know, 5 6 interviews later, there you are, flying to Dublin, to start working with Airbnb. So pretty cool story. What can you tell us about your time there? What do you take as a lesson, that you basically were able to put in practice when starting your property management company?
So working for Airbnb was a game changer for me, because I have never thought I would actually be a property manager or an operator, right? Um, why was it? Because I could clearly see the market gap. I could clearly see that this kind of service industry is gonna be the dominant one. If not, I mean, if not the dominant, it would actually take up a lot of market share from hotels. So I learned a lot, because in with Airbnb, I was managing the Middle East and Africa pro hosts, which are the property management companies basically that are within a 58 country region, which is the Middle East and Africa. Obviously, we were more focused on, let's say, six or eight of those top markets, which were like South Africa, Dubai, Morocco, Lebanon, and such markets. And even Egypt was at that time starting to be interesting. So hearing all the issues from the operators, you slowly build a perception of the business. You you hear you hear over and over the same problems over and over again. So you got a bad review because the guest was like we did he wanted a late checkout and we couldn't give him that late checkout, so he gave us like a 2-star review. Okay, that's unfair. And then you see those property managers calling you saying that what can you do about it? Well, obviously you can't do anything about an Airbnb review, right? So this was one part. Second part was the tech stack of these companies. You see them growing. You ask them, how do you actually acquire your listings? So every and each one of them has his own way of growing his supply, of growing his inventory. They have a different pace and they have a different way of approaching that. They have a different tech stack. Some property managers are more interested in revenue management. Some of them are more interested in interior design. They're not really price sensitive that much. Some of them are just after the reviews. We don't care about anything else. We're just focused on reviews. This is our bread and butter, every single day. So you see different variations of property management companies, more interested in different aspects of the business. And when I put this together, I was able to actually paint something in my head. Okay, so I want to establish a property management company that actually looks and feels like Airbnb, and is very price sensitive and understands what revenue management is, because this is a very important part of the industry. Although some might not agree, but you are actually a hotel that is spread over so many parts of the city, right? So you have to care about revenue management, and then you want it to look so good, just like a hotel would look like. And you would want to care so much about the review, just like a normal host would. So putting all this together with a good tech stack is just the formula for continuity in this business. So I was able to put this over the years. I worked with Airbnb for 2.5 years, and I was able to paint that picture in my mind. And I went back to Cairo, met a friend. We started the business, and I was for 6 months an Airbnb employee and a founder of what what Xuru Stays is now. So for 6 months, I was actually traveling back and forth between Dublin and Cairo, and I didn't want to leave Airbnb, to be honest, but the opportunity was too big, because we were actually, maybe by in 2019 when we started, we were probably second or third property management company to start in Egypt. So it was a really good opportunity. Now there are like probably close to hundreds of property management companies in Egypt, but the learning curve, the journey, was definitely something that I'm not from a hospitality background. I'm a telecom engineer, so going all through this for the past 7 years was definitely something that I didn't see coming. It was
Mhm.
all I think it was just like some good luck with a lot of hard work.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's usually the case, right? Luck is
Yeah,
when timing meets preparation or something like that,
yeah.
that they say.
Mm.
Now, let, tell me about, of course, whatever you can share, and whatever you can't share, please don't. But like in terms of working with Airbnb, was there anything about their culture or the way they run things internally? Because it's a big company, right? So I'm sure it can be interesting from a learning perspective to see how they handle certain things. Is there anything about that internal approach to either culture or to management or to the organizational chart, or anything, the way they run meetings, whatever that might be, that you took as something either to replicate or to avoid for your own company?
Well, definitely the culture side is a big, big aspect of Airbnb. So, and you clearly see that in their, in the way they have built the Airbnb app, in the way they support the hosts and the support the guests. The belonging and the diversity part of Airbnb is a big, big chunk of what Airbnb is made of. So, and the culture within Airbnb was so warm, unlike any other tech company. It's more like so. For instance, this is not something. This is something I can share. For instance, if you work for Airbnb, you can bring in your bed sheets for a free dry clean. You know, this is something that not a lot of tech companies would do, right? And this is one of the core aspects. So you can bring in your dirty bed sheets from your home, and Airbnb would bring them back to you, nice and clean and crisp and fresh, and with an Airbnb bag. This was something that, uh, although it's a small thing amongst a lot of perks, but this was something that is so meaningful. It says a lot about Airbnb, right? So the culture was very warm, was very because Airbnb doesn't. It's not a commission based employee kind of workspace. So you don't have a target. Your target is nurturing the the market that you look after, to actually put the right hosts in that market so that the Airbnb guests, can find good supply and book
Mhm.
these properties. Okay. So this was the main focus. So it wasn't a very aggressive job. I would say it was a huge learning curve. There were so many great talents. Till this day, I learned from them within the Airbnb environment. And I'm still in touch with all the people I've learned from, and all the people that are currently looking after the market at
Mhm.
Airbnb. We're in touch with them. It was an amazing journey, I would say,
So what are
working
you
for
doing?
Airbnb.
What are you doing with your company, or what have you done with your company at Xuru to try to come and
Okay.
replicate or inspire yourself from that culture of belonging, or when it comes to your team, what ideas have come out of that experience?
So one of that was flexibility to say what you need to say at any point of time, and the belonging side. I try to bring that to the team, to my team here, because in this part of the world, the way you would start a small business or a startup, you would have an aggressive approach as a founder. You want to hit your targets. You want to make profit on the first day of the business. You're not that forgiving, right?
Hmm.
What I tried to bring, which would actually make a lot of difference for the people that work with us, is that no matter what the problem is, like, there's I mean you we would have to trust that every single person working for our company is actually good at something. He might not be good at what he actually does now, but it's our job to rediscover that person. It's not like no one's just bad at everything. Like, you could be bad at doing a job that involves a lot of chatting, but you could be an amazing person when it comes to marketing or social media or
Hmm.
finance, and you didn't actually know about it. So what I try to do is to give my team the vision that we want. The vision is simple, is and it's just that we want our stays to be as magical as possible, because you can't have them like just magical, right? You want them as magical, and you want to inspire that in them, and you want them to actually inspire each other. I try to make them more to experience different departments, to bring that Airbnb culture within our business, because it's so forgiving, and it's so I would say people oriented. It's not sales oriented, and this makes a lot of difference, because you don't want your um, let's say virtual assistant, or your your guest relations specialist, doing the same job every single day and answering to the same guests or different guests every single day. You would want to give him an opportunity in a different department, or in think on a different project. This brings a lot of excitement.
Hmm.
And like I said, no one is actually bad at everything. They might be the worst, you know, um, maintenance people, but they could be the best team leaders, for instance. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
so this is what we actually discovered. Like talent
That's very interesting. Yeah.
is a big thing.
And taking that approach of like, it's your responsibility as a company, as a leader, to find out where this person excels. It's a very interesting approach, because you could also decide like, oh, you blame it on them, it's
You
their
can easily
problem.
do
But
that,
but
and
but, but if you
we did
switch
that.
it around, if you flip it around, like, I see
Oh
how that
yes.
can become super, super powerful. Now, I would like to finish, Mina, with two things. One, let's talk about just kind of like bigger picture, the evolution of Egypt as a market, where it's at now, where it's heading. What excites you the most about what's ahead, right? In terms of that region, um, and I would say Middle East and Africa as a whole as well. If you have anything that excites you from what you've seen there. But I would want to throw into that question as well, like, what's unique about doing. You've talked about revenue management a couple of times, as you know. We also are super passionate about that topic. What is unique about doing revenue management in the context of your markets?
Okay, so what's exciting about the market in Egypt, for instance? So Egypt is, obviously famous for a lot of tourism, historic tourism, the pyramids, a lot of ancient Egyptian culture, which is something that is gaining a lot of global attraction and has always been like that. But unfortunately, for the past, I would say, 10 years or even more, there wasn't a good landscape for nurturing or growing that segment in the market, okay, which is the tourism sector in general.
Hmm.
Now, what is exciting is things are changing. Why is it changing? In just the past 12 months, the market has grew in terms of inventory, for instance, with 30% more inventory, which is a lot of growth in just
Hmm.
1 year. Okay.
Hmm.
Second number is that we have hit a 25% increase in the number of tourists visiting in Egypt, and this is somewhere close to 20 million tourists
Hmm.
in Egypt, and this is a
Hmm.
big number for a big country like Egypt. There's a lot of room as well. Um,
Hmm.
This is one part. Second part is the biggest museum in the world just opened last week. So,
That's huge.
and that's it took it's a $1 billion museum, and it is suspected to attract more than 5 million tourists per year. So that's a lot of business, if you think about it.
Hmm.
Um, now is the time for Airbnb to work with the government here to put these kind of regulations and everything, just like any other developing market. So this is what's exciting, and I'm grateful that we have actually started this business 6 years ago, because now we are business ready instead of just hurdling into our way
Hmm.
of property management. We are more established. We are ready to take on more business in a very I mean structured way. So um, and this is probably the edge that we have started early on.
Yeah.
This is
So
what I
that's
see.
that's what's happening, and it's exciting. And of course, for the region, I mean, it's huge. Of course, I'm sure. You had mentioned something as well, like in terms of your market, how it was really supply constrained. Like there's not enough supply for the demand, and on top of that, there's a bunch of additional demand that's going to be coming with the project that you just
Mhm.
described. I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of markets have a different problem. A lot of markets have too much supply, or supply growth is outpacing demand growth, and that's the conversation on competitiveness, and making sure that you stand out and all of those things. When you look at pricing strategy in the context of a market that's supply constrained, as opposed to you know basically having too much of it, how do you think about revenue management differently? Like, what's unique about your view of how you guys do revenue management?
Okay, so revenue management is, I would say, the second most important aspect of this business. If I would say the first would be how your property looks like. Okay, so when you say supply, there is bookable supply and there is just supply. So uh, when a market is supply constrained, means that the good bookable supply is actually very low. The ratio between bookable supply and all the rest should be, for a healthy market, should be in the top 75th or 80th percentile. You have to have like 80% of the market offering good supply. In in a market like Egypt, the issue is that we have supply, but it's very unregulated, very uh, under maintained, uh, not appealing enough, and that what makes the market undersupplied, because the bookable supply is very limited. The actual good uh, uh, good, nicely priced and well staged and well maintained uh, serviced properties are very low. Revenue management is, I would say, comes second after staging your property, putting everything in, doing super interior design. You've got the perfect pictures. If you price the property in a wrong way, you've lost money. Or if
Mhm.
you keep it at a constant, say, okay, you just want, so the market says that the ref bar or the night the ADR is around $100. So I'm just gonna put it at $100 till the season hits, and then I'm gonna make it, let's say, $150. Okay, that's nice, but guess what? Things change overnight. If you don't have a revenue management tool, you won't actually understand your pacing. You will probably be leaving money on the table because you were
Hmm.
either overpriced or you were too cheap. So you got booked for the next 2 months
Hmm.
when the booking lead time is a week. So
Hmm.
you actually sold all your products for the next 2 months. You were too cheap. And this is where revenue management is. You have to understand the metrics. You have to learn the terms, booking lead time and the ADR and the ref bar. And even with the ref bar, is it worth spending that much time on a property that has a $20 ref bar versus a $200 ref bar? This
Yeah.
is These are all aspects of the business that you have to think about. So revenue management for us is everything that we do every single day. So we are more interested in revenue management than any other, I would say, I assume, any other property management company in Egypt, because
Hmm.
this is what differentiates us, and this is what makes us more, I would say, profitable for the property owner.
Yeah. And I would, again, I would assume that when you're pricing in a market with limited bookable supply versus with a lot of bookable supply, that there's something different at a strategic level on how you price. I would assume you're looking at maybe being able to command higher rates, maybe hold your rates higher for a little bit longer, having to play less of a, proactive sort of need to start discounting, so ahead of time, because again, you're kind of like the only option, or you're one of the few, alternatives. So versus in a market where, again, so much saturation, so much supply is bookable, you might want to, start thinking about, reacting a little bit more in advance, and you might want to, be more on the aggressive side, versus you're more on the testing the pricing elasticity side, and seeing, maybe whether you can come at even higher rates, to a certain degree, because it has to, it has an impact on guest
Of
expectations as
course.
well. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting position to be in, and I'm gonna be very curious, to speak with you in a few months as well, once you have continued to grow the Dubai side, because I'd be very interested in comparing your, approach to revenue management. How it's got to be different, when it
Oh
comes to,
yes.
Dubai versus Egypt. So I think that could make for a fun conversation as well at that point. Mina, this has been great. Thank you so much for the time. Thanks so much for the lessons. Thanks so much for the insights, for sharing your
Thank you, Seb.
story. And you also just opened a huge hotel, no?
Yep, we did, and there's so many things. We're caught up with a lot of operations now. The commissioning part is really terrifying at the beginning, because you want to set your guest expectations from on the first day, but it just doesn't come, in the first week. It takes some time. So I'm trying to be more, that forgiving person, that it's okay. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that it's not gonna
Applying
work. Okay.
that
Yeah, trying
Airbnb
to
culture
struggle.
mindset. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
All
trying to
right,
struggle.
all right. Well,
Yeah.
we'll have to do a session where we talk more about the hotel as well once it's up and running. But again, Mina, thanks so much for your time. It was great to have you on, and we'll
Thank
stay in
you.
touch. Okay.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Seb.
All right. Thank you.